In this video, we're talking about a build that I have seriously been enjoying as of late, a Rend build. And honestly, I've had a Rend build for so long, but I've recently made a change, and it's honestly been some of the best gameplay experiences I've had in a while. Let's talk about this build. I want to go ahead and preface this. There are so many ways to do a Rend build, and while I'm mentioning one of the builds, maybe even two of the builds right now, there are so many ways to do a Rend build, quote unquote. Before you jump in the comments and you're like, but that's not how I do Rend, congratulations. I'm really excited, and as long as it works in your group and your team comp, whatever the case, have fun. However, this is what is being used in worms and in-game content, and still is one of the highest Rend opportunities in the game at 111% Rend from one build. Let's get into this. Now, I want to go ahead and say that even though this build does 111% Rend, 70 is the cap for most mobs in the game unless they have a weakness to Rend and it increases it. Also, Rend does not mean you do 110% more damage. You've just lowered their armor by that much. First off, we're going to be talking about weapons, and to start off, we're going to be talking about the Butcher, which you can get from, I think it's Dynasty Mutations. Hopefully you've gotten it by now. If not, it's not in rotation this week or maybe even next week. I don't know. We'll see if it's next week. Anyway, the Butcher, and on this, you're going to be putting gem setting pins so that you can put an actual gem slot on here, and in that, you're going to be putting a diamond so you can do more damage at full health. Why do you want to do that? Because you want more damage. So put it in there. The upgrades on this is Jagged Whirls. Whirling Blade does bleeds, dealing 10% damage for 6 seconds. Empowering Whirling Blade for even more base damage. And then Keenly Jagged. And then bleeds last 33% longer on both weapons, which does work depending on if you run a spear in the offhand. But this doesn't really help what we typically use, which is a hammer for a Rend build. Next, let's talk about the hammer specifically. Now, this is what I would say is a Rend hammer. You can get this on the market. Most of the auction houses that I've checked have Rend hammers. Now, the third perk is kind of a throwaway, but if you can get one refreshing move or even keen, that's kind of where you want to go. But this is pretty standard. You want Trenchant Rend and Sundering Clear Out. Now, some of you are going to be like, but I want Shockwave on the hammer. Well, okay, all right, thank you so much. That doesn't help because Shockwave on the hammer only does 15% compared to Clear Out doing 24, whereas on the armor, Clear Out does 10 as well as Shockwave doing 10. So what does more Rend over time when you add them all up? Clear Out. So you put Clear Out on the hammer. That's what you want to be running, Sundering Clear Out and Trenchant Rend on the hammer. I've got mine rolled Strength. I have a con one as well, depending on my attribute spread and how my armor is working. I choose either one. However, I'm running 5 con in a lot of these like really big DPS builds as of late, so I've been running the Strength one a lot. Now, we're going to get into armor, and you're going to be like, but Brandon, I see the Gray Wizard's hat. Yes, you see the Gray Wizard's hat. This is kind of a choice that makes sense in the fact of you'll see the upgrade bubbles in just a moment, but you have to run all light gear, and the only other light option that you have that would work in this build, honestly, is Tumbler Feet Wraps, and you most likely have already put Shirking Heels as the other perk on that, and yeah, so whatever the case, Gray Wizard's hat, you'll see why it's important in a second. That being said, we put Sundering Shockwave on here because it was easier to upgrade, and at 725, you get 1 extra percent right here, so you get 11%. So that's what's really nice. We put this here because it was the cheapest to upgrade with a coconut and 1 seal to be able to do this compared to 3 from some of the other stuff. Now, we're getting into gear that you need to understand. You can get, I'm showing you the gear I have, but you can totally get other pieces of gear to put into place, and I'll talk about them. For my chest that I'm currently running right now, I've had the opportunity and the luck to get the Silken Cocoon, which is the Keen Light Shirt from Worm, but you don't have to run this. The Azoth Light Shirt, Crystal Light Shirt, all of the Azoth Crystal gear here, I'll show you a piece. All of the Azoth Crystal gear comes with Enchanted Ward and Refreshing, and you're going to want 4 Enchanted Ward and 4 Refreshing on this build, as well as on evade builds and things like that, depending on if you're in Worm or whatever the case, and you're down in the Cuddle Puddle, and you're getting in the mix of stuff, you want Enchanted Ward, 4 of them. Okay, so the Azoth Crystal stuff works great. So Azoth Crystal shirt, mask, heavy, lights, mediums, whatever the case, all of them come. Enchanted Ward, Refreshing. You can change the third perk. So I would even put that for this other piece right here. You could get an Azoth Crystal shirt, or you can find anything that has Enchanted Ward and Refreshing, or whatever the case. I just happen to have this one, so I'm going to use it because it's nice. And all of the gear has to be light and a round shield, by the way. For the gloves, I'm actually using Hoplite hand covers. Again, Enchanted Ward Refreshing. I just wanted this because I had it, because I've been running Gorg. And so I put Contagious Upheaval on here for the actual weapon perk. You want to put this somewhere so you can do more damage and get rid of 2 debuffs onto the boss or the ad that you're attacking. For the legs, I have 2 options depending on how I play this build. I'm going to show you the one and I'm going to show you the other one here in just a moment. But for this one specifically, I have Enchanted Ward and Empowering Leaping Strike. Sword attacks deal 20% extra damage if they've been hit with the Cowardly Punishment upgrade slow, which is nice, but you can't hit a lot of people with it, which is why I've been using the other part of this build to do even more damage over time. So Empowering Leaping Strike, if you're like a fan of using that, put that somewhere on your gear. Otherwise, you're going to be using Fortifying Shield Rush, which is what I'm going to be showing you today with this build, but I'll show you the attribute tree with the other one as well. So Enchanted Ward Refreshing, you can see that, but Fortifying Shield Rush just to get a little bit more fortify. This one's not required, but it's nice to have, get you a little bit more fortification. And for my boots, guess what? Enchanted Ward Refreshing. Health is it's a great perk, but you could totally put something else here if you wanted. And this was actually one I got from the beta coconuts that they gave out. You can buy something on the market, or guess what? Go get the Azoth Crystal gear. Go to M2s, do your M2s, and have some fun with them. Get some drops. Just make sure you slot all light, and then it'll drop them from M2s, or just buy them from the kiln. Just go and get them all from the kiln too. For the shield, this is the shield I do recommend. However, you can only get this shield if you have 250 weaponsmithing and you have to craft it yourself because it's bind on pickup. That being said, if you can't find one, get one on the market that has as many damage perks as possible. That's a round shield. This one just comes with Keen, Vicious, Shield Aggression, and Enchanted. All positive damage perks, but even you can see on some of these other light shields that I have, like this one is a Mending Vortex shield, right? I think I even have a couple on my back. Here's the one with Enchanted Ward, Keen and Shield Aggression, Enchanted Ward, Refreshing Shield Aggression. So it just depends on what you kind of find to be able to slot in your build. Here's Shield Aggression, Enchanted Ward, Mending Vortex. So you can probably find something that's close to it. But I love this one specifically because it's really cheap to craft. You just have to have 250 weaponsmithing. For the jewelry, this is completely up to you on how you run it. I like Empowered on the amulet. Everything else you can do whatever you want. Whatever protection you want, whatever you want somewhere else. Health, Divine, whatever the case. This is what I use for worms because I have Strike Protection and Empowered. I wish I had health just to get a little bit more health for safety kind of stuff. But this is what I was able to buy cheap off the market. This isn't BIS, whatever the case. But I do like Empowered, so you can keep all the damage lasting as much as you can. For the ring, we are using Elemental Band. This comes from the raid. You totally don't have to use this, but I'm using Keen Awareness for more crit chance, Hardy, and Leeching so you can get some healing. You can get the Azoth Crystal ring, which I might have one on me. Yeah, so here's an Azoth Crystal ring. It comes with Hardy and Leeching stock, and this one has Refreshing. You can change it out to Keen Awareness. You can get this, guess what, from the kiln or from M2 Expeditions. Pretty easy to be able to get, and just change this out with some seals. And then for your earring, you could run, the Endless Thirst or whatever the case. I don't really care. But I do like Empowering Toast. So you can eat a pot, have some empowerment, stuff like that. And Healing Hearts are really nice as well because you're running such low health. All of that being said, let's talk about Heartrunes. Now, in DPS situations, you're probably going to want to have all 4 Heartrunes that you're probably going to need. Stalwarts, you can be able to get through any kind of grit. Stalwart Heartrune of Stone form. You're going to want Deado if you're doing Worm, or even if you're doing any kind of war situations. Brutal Heartrune of Detonate, so you can get haste as well as a bigger explosion. You're going to want Fire Kick, which is the Stalwart Heartrune of Firestorm, the specific upgrade to get Cleansing Storm. And then you're also going to want Vines, Brutal Heartrune of Grasping Vines, so that you can actually do Rends and Enfeeblings. This is for Gorg mostly. But this Rend build is applied in a lot of different things, a lot of PvE content. You can do a lot of fun stuff in PvP with this as well. But I'm not saying this is a PvP build. I'm talking about Rend for PvE, right? Anyway, really cool build when it comes down to this. Grab those 4 things. Before we move on, let's talk about gems themselves. You're going to be able to see that in all of mine, I have punishing carnelians, which means that I'm taking less threat from my attacks. I'm doing more damage to taunted foes, and because they're punishing, more damage from melee attacks. I have them in all of my gear, and I'm running carnelians in all of my jewelry. Why? Because I don't want threat, right? Especially in Worm, which is what I've been running a lot of lately, you want to make sure you're doing the least amount of threat so that the person who's doing range tanking, which most of the time is what's happening, they're the ones being able to keep threat. They've got a carnelian, hated, despised, things like that. To be able to keep the threat, you want to do as little threat as possible. So you run it all this way. The big downside of this is you can't really protect for specific things. That's why maybe having an amulet with the protection that you really need and swapping this one out can give you a 20% in whichever area that you would like. Now, let's go to attributes and then skill tree. For attributes itself, what we're going to do is actually I'm going to run 350 strength, and I'm going to run everything else in dexterity that I'm not going to put in con. And for right now, we're just going to run 5 con. And so what does this put me at? 256 dexterity. 55 intelligence. Now, Brandon, why would you run 55 intelligence? It's not going to help you necessarily. Yes, it will. Look, 5% damage increase to backstabs and random critical hits. Love that. As well as 5% base damage to increase to targets inflicted with a damage over time effect, which we're doing because of bleeds. Our base is 1855, and with these two puts us over 2,000 base damage just from the intelligence, not to mention all the other base damage increases that we get along the other trees, right? Now you could totally run 100 con, 150 dex, 200 con, 50 dex, right? Depending on how you want to play your build. But for right now, and in big content, you're running as low a con as you possibly can. I'm a healer main. I hate the idea of 5 con Andes because it's very much risk reward. If you're dead, you're doing 0 DPS, you're not doing Rends, right? So as a Rend bot, you probably want to play it safe, run 100 con so that you know you're up, they can rely on you. But if you can play it well and you can really understand dodges and blocks and things, 5 con's really fun with this build. All right, let's go with attribute tree. Go ahead and screenshot this so you can hold on to this. What we've got right here is upheaval. We're going with Whirling Blade and then Shield Rush. Specifically, so we can get Tactician, reduce cooldowns. Whirling Blade is our first set of Rend. We have 15% Rend if we're in a light equip right here. And then we also have the final attack in our light attack chain does Rend as well. That's 30% Rend just from popping Whirling Blade and light attacking, right? That's really easy just from our sword. We're using Shield Rush, so we can apply a 20% weaken as well as a slow for 30% to get 4 seconds of that, so that we can get more base damage from Opportunist, so we can have more crit chance, we get some haste, and then obviously Leadership giving us a boost over here. We're also using one with the shield. Based upon what shield you have, just hitting the target will increase duration of all debuffs. So if you're light attacking with your sword, you're helping all of the debuffs that are happening just continue to be increased, which is so good. This is basically like having, like Disdained Infliction, just swinging and hitting with Disdained Infliction is so nice. The other part of this build is you could totally drop Shield Rush and go Leaping Strike, and I've been playing with this as well. I love this part of the build, but this feels even more helpful because you're also applying a 20% weaken to help your team out. For the hammer, this is what I would run. Screenshot this, look at it, save it, whatever the case. There's not much to explain here. This is pretty typical for Armor Breaker, Shockwave, and Clear Out. The only thing I would change is you could probably drop Aftershock and put that somewhere else. Maybe Opening Act. Maybe you could put it into Crowd Crush Heals, put it into some Haste, things like that. There's a bunch of things you can do, right? But this is pretty typical. You're going to get 30% from Armor Breaker, which brings us up to 60% Rend when you have those things that we've already done. Shockwave will do 11% if you have the actual Rend ability on your armor. And then Clear Out does 24. So we had 60%, there's 71. 24 puts us at 95. Yeah, I think it's 95. That's 95 with Clear Out. And then the last way for us to get Rend is actually to heavy attack with the hammer, which gives us Trenchant Rend. 16%. Now, I want to talk about this for a second because this might be kind of weird. What you need to know is this. From a Rend perspective, if I apply a Trenchant Rend or I hit it with Sundering Clear Out, that's going to apply that Rend, right? But if 10 people who have Trenchant Rend heavy attack, does that mean it's 160% Rend? The answer is no. It only counts the buff one time. So even if you have Rend from a whole bunch of other abilities, you have a Rend Spear and all of this stuff, it only applies one time. That's why it's best to spread the Rend out across a bunch of different weapons. Like you've got Rending Throw from the hatchet, you've got Rend from the spear, you've got Rend from the greatsword, you've got Rend from the hammer, from the sword, and there's so many other ways to get Rend in the game to be able to get up to a really reasonable cap. And seeing as there's a 70% cap on mobs, in Gorgon, it's like a 140 cap because there's a 50% weakness to Rends. So that being said, you know, depending on the activity, it could really make sense to stack these Rends up. So to go ahead and test this out, we're going to go ahead and just show you a little bit of the damage. The way that I like to do this is actually Shield Rush into a heavy attack, Whirling Blade, Upheaval. Big damage, but you don't have to use all the abilities. I mean, we're just regular open PvE. These things have 70% cap, unless it's like they have a weakness to it, which they don't. This one specifically has a 70% cap on Rend, so I don't have to dump all of my abilities. It's just wasted at that point. So here's the rotation. I'm going to Shield Rush, Heavy Attack, go ahead and do a Whirling Blade into Upheaval, and you can see 11k hit on that Upheaval. That's just nuts, brother. He just melted. It's so easy to do single target damage on this. Now, obviously, I'm running 5-con, so if I were to charge a whole bunch of enemies, especially with 700 armor, it would not be a good day. But as you can see, just this little attack combination right here, 8k, right? Now, I could totally just sit here and dodge all of this. Boop. He's going to die just from bleeds, right? I could totally dodge stuff and make things easy, but I just want to show you that this build is just, it's so crazy. I could be blocking, things like that to make this easy, but man, I love the possibilities and the opportunities that this build awards. Just look, I can go ahead and get in here, let's apply some Rends with the hammer, 6k with a heavy attack, he's done. Just melted, and I'm in an elite area. This is Tribunal, right? So the other options that you have for your offhand, which is something that I do if I'm running just like regular PvE content, I will put a spear on, and this actually messes up my attributes, so I will respec. And the reason I put a spear on is because this one specifically is an enfeebling skewer spear, so I can actually hit Weaken Cap by just hitting the one ability. Oh yeah, I forgot to eat a dex food, it just ran out. But anyway, I can hit a like Empower Cap by just hitting one ability, or Weaken Cap rather, and then also apply a bunch of bleeds, which are extended because of what we're actually using, which is the Butcher. So I'm gonna go up here, we're gonna go ahead and attack this with the Skewer, just dump all of our spear abilities. We're gonna dodge first, hit our ability, hit the Perforate. There's all those bleeds. Attack for some big empowers. Light attacks. Look at all those bleeds go. Oh, it's just so beautiful. And so a spear is really good unless you're doing like Gorgon or Worm or something like that and you're already hitting the cap. You totally could just swap to another offhand. But when it comes from like a Rend perspective, you need the hammer. But this build works really well if you want to put a spear on. If you just want a different type of gameplay. I mean, just watch. Just look. Go ahead and dodge. So our cooldowns are okay. Boop, boop, boop. Shield Rush. Heavy attack. There's not even enough health for me to even do my full kit there. It's just, oh man, it's just kind of crazy. So that's basically this build. I'm going to show you some footage so you can see this in action. I want to make sure I go ahead and talk about it. The other types of builds. Sure. Can you run Hammer Sin? Yes, actually, that was my Rend build for the longest time. Debuff slash 20% longer on both weapons. So yes, you're going to have your Rends up for even longer. Sin is great. You can get ranged as well as up close. You get the invulnerability from Keen Berserk. It's really nice. Awesome. You can also run Serenity and Grace and Hammer, which is also nice, but you're at 95% with Rend if you're using Serenity. You're at 100% with Sin if you're using Sin, and then you're at 111 if you're using Butcher. So if you want the most Rends in the game, you're running this Butcher build. If you want the most damage output, you're probably running Serenity. And then if you're wanting the most, like, how long they're going to last on the boss with utility, because you get ranged if you have throwing on, Sin is a really good option. So there's multiple ways to play this build. But I'm really enjoying this Butcher build right now. Thank you so much for watching this video. Comment down below any thoughts, questions, comments, anything that people might be able to read and also learn from. Don't just go down in the comments and troll. Go down and be helpful, because people also are reading those comments. Trust me. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video. Hope you all have a great day.